So as you finish your drawings, whether they're the whole face or half face, you may find that you are done a little bit early, and if you wanted to add to your portrait, one option is to not leave the white border, but instead to cut it out and to create a patterned background in the style of an artist like Kehinde-Wiley. And you're going to see a photo of Wiley's work inserted here. And if you like that sort of patterned background, we have a couple options for you to create your own patterned background. The first is to use a colored paper. So the background would be a color of construction paper. If you use a lighter color, it actually works a little bit better. So that you can make a stencil, and I'm going to be showing you how to make a stencil, but basically a stencil is going to be made from a small card. You're going to draw on the card and cut out the pattern, leaving basically holes that you can trace inside of. And I've got a pink one started here so that you can see that I've taken this stencil, I've laid it so that it's happening in a pattern across the top of this page, and I can completely fill the page with that image. What can happen inside are a couple things. If I wanted to add color inside each of those areas, I could use my marker to carefully outline, and a fatter marker might work better, but I can actually kind of trace nicely with skinny marker, and I could leave some that are just outlines. I could use different colors. I'd want to be pretty planful about whether that pattern includes just color or just outlines. How would I want to do that? So one option would be to be really planful with a colored sheet of paper, colored markers, figuring out what the stencil is and creating a pattern that repeats. You may also choose to alternate color and outlines so that when you put your image down, you have an interesting pattern that's happening behind your head. To make the stencils, you're going to need a piece of cardboard. It's actually a piece of a folder that's already cut for you. These will be at your table or at the cutting table. We're going to have a specific station for it. And you're going to have to draw a pattern on. So you can see these are some examples that I've just freehand drawn. Honestly, I think the simpler the better. This leafy one is a lot more time consuming to cut out than something like the squares. And you are going to get a cutting mat after you draw your stencil. You're going to need an X-Acto knife, and the smaller your lines are, the more time consuming it is going to be to cut out. So what you want to do is just trace with that blade really carefully and right on top of the cutting mat. My blade is a little bit dull. You're going to have a lot nicer, newer blades to use. But you can see that this should pop out, and I've got one circle. Now I've been cutting some more, and I've got circles cut out. The more complicated your design, the longer you'll need to take. Always make sure that you are cutting away from your fingers. You do not want to cut your finger off or even cut yourself in the slightest. So these little stars are going to take me a little bit more time. You can see what it looks like from the back. If you find that your design is actually not bold enough, You can always cut more out, but you can't add more to it. One of the great things about using these stencils is that you can always enlarge certain areas. So I've got a lot of area that I could make these circles bigger or turn them into ovals. I decided not to do these extra little stars. I think that when I repeat this, I'm going to have enough of the stars so that those are going to be a little bit more of a focal point or focus area that gets emphasized because there's so many of the circles around. So if I were going to start to trace it, one of the things that I need to figure out is how they're going to fit on the page, and if I need them to be closer together or further apart. If I feel like I need to make my stencil a little bit narrower, I can do that. You are going to be doing the tracing and kind of coloring on your own with this. And as you'll remember, I've got this one started, so I think I'll finish this really quickly. So now I've got all of my stenciling done and the color work is finished. I went around and changed the color on some of these and did some outlining so that it looked a little bit more interesting. You could use a black felt tip marker or something else to kind of outline and embellish. But the final piece would be to see how your portrait is going to look on that background. And I know it's a little hard to squeeze in the screen here, but if you see that you could use more areas of interest, like I'm wondering about these pink spots along the sides and wondering if I could get some stencil piece drawn back in, I might go ahead and try to add a little bit of embellishment, maybe using some red, because I really like what's going on at the top, but I'm not as interested on the sides. Once I get all of that done, I'm going to use a little bit of glue, just a very little, either with a glue stick or small dots that I'm going to smudge, maybe with my finger, so that the image lies really flat. And that is going to be the portrait with a Kehinde-Wiley inspired design on the back.